Have you ever wondered why every time some guy takes a bite out of the mailman, the world seems to become just a little more commie, right? Why is it that every single time the dead rise, capitalism falls? The Last of Us wasn't even subtle about it.
So, communism.
Nah, it ain't like that.
It is that, literally. This is the commune. We're communists.
So, do zombies make you communist? Conservatives would argue that free market capitalism is the strongest system in the world. You've got economic growth and opportunity, individual freedom, innovation and progress, right? In theory, it rewards hard work and innovation, but in practice, we know it just rewards those who started with the most coin.
Yep, with a capital C.
So if capitalism is the best system in the world, why does it always fold within the first 5 minutes of a zombie outbreak? Where's the tech billionaire CEO in the apocalypse with a chainsaw and a plan? Why do zombies break the system so hard it never comes back? Well, the short answer is that zombies are nature's response to capitalism. They present a unique challenge that not only breaks the system at its core, but exposes humanity's greatest weakness within itself. Zombies as a genre are meant to challenge the merits and values that capitalism holds above all else. They hold a mirror up to the darkest parts of human nature, and in some ways show how the undead are better humans than the living. I plan on unpacking all of this and more with my legendary guest Hassan Piker and Asmongold towards the end of the video. But before we can even chat with them about that, we first need to understand what makes zombies a unique threat. What defines the zombie apocalypses over all of the other ways the world could end? What makes them so special, and why are they the ones that always break down capitalism?
Be sure to make sure to subscribe.
Well, for starters, zombies are of course undead, right?
I thought that was pretty obvious.
They are completely undeterred by pain, they look like humans because they are humans, and the more they kill, the greater their numbers become. All of these things are what define zombies as a unique threat amongst other ways that the world could end. Most importantly, they always win, right? There's no zombie apocalypse where everything's reversed and everyone's happy, outside of maybe Shaun of the Dead, but even they have their own problems, as we'll talk about later. More importantly, they're a powerful metaphor, a walking, rotting, brain-rotting clapback at the system. I mean, let's go all the way back to George Romero's Night of the Living Dead, which really defined zombies as a new and unique threat. Beforehand, zombies were undead corpses that were revived through voodoo or magic, but George Romero turned them not only into a more virus-based zombies that we know and love today, but he also created them as a critique of capitalism.
I salute you.
As we can see here, Night of the Living Dead, particularly its sequel, Dawn of the Dead, is often interpreted as a critique of capitalism, especially in the late 1960s American version. Zombies are, consuming machines. They have an insatiable hunger for human flesh. They can be seen as a metaphor for the relentless drive for consumption and accumulation within capitalism. They're a critique of consumer culture. The film's depiction of society often focused on consumerism and material possessions, to the point of forgetting basic human needs, can be viewed as a commentary on the social pressure of consumer culture. All of this was intended originally as a critique of capitalism. Zombies are essentially dehumanized people, reduced to nothing but their basic need to consume. Essentially, zombies are what capitalism turns us into. People stripped of their identity, unified by nothing else but their rapid need for consumption. Zombies are the end result of a system that devalues life until it stops meaning anything. It also shows how easy capitalism is to exploit. I mean, look at the start of every zombie outbreak. We watched how quickly everything shut down in Walking Dead, passing through all major forms of travel throughout the globalized economy. I mean, think of the infamous opening showing everyone driving outside of Atlanta. In The Last of Us, the infection spreads through the global food supply. Flour gets mass distributed with no oversight because when profit is priority, safety becomes optional. The only people that were safe were the people like Joel and Ellie, who just so happened to choose a gluten-free breakfast that morning.
To avoid gluten.
Shaun of the Dead puts this in almost one of the most brilliant ways that we've ever seen before. He walks past dead bodies, he walks past people on the street just going crazy. He doesn't notice anything, he just wants to get his cornetto. He's essentially become a zombie in real life. This is such a poignant visual metaphor for the kind of zombies that capitalism turns us into. Zombies exploit that everything capitalism depends on. Expansion. The same systems that made the world profitable are the same ones that let the world burn in record time. Zombies don't need passports, they move with people. Shipping routes, international travel. All these things we built to grow the economy become the perfect delivery system for a global collapse. And when the system breaks, nature steps in. Our obsession with efficiency and connectivity means an outbreak in one place becomes an outbreak everywhere. And that's what zombies really are. They're nature hitting the reset button. A slow, flesh-eating audit. An overdue correction on a society that's been pushed too far and forgotten what it means to be human. More importantly, they show how fast those systems can collapse and the catastrophic consequences that happen when they do. We saw the reality of this threat during COVID. The virus was discovered in November of 2019, and by March of 2020, we had shut down 90% of the global economy. Entire industries couldn't function because shipping routes and containers or workers, all of those things, the infection moved with it. And that was from a virus with a 99% survival rate. Imagine that same thing, except everyone who gets infected tries to eat their neighbor. Now, at this point, you may be saying to yourself, okay, Dodd, sure, that explains why the system breaks initially, but communist systems break then too, right? Like, the zombie apocalypse in and of itself shows how systems break. It doesn't explain why those systems stay broken and why communism is the only one to rise out of that and not capitalism, which is a totally great and valid point. I appreciate you for keeping me honest, my guy. You're a real one. So why is it that the only way to survive in the zombie apocalypse is to share? Why don't we got a hedge fund guy running the communes in the post-apocalypse, right? Well, that's because capitalism is only strong when the world is stable, when people can be distracted, pacified, marketed to. The second things fall apart, all the capital in the world won't save you. Think of like the broader implications of global trade being broken down over the past decades, right? Electricity comes out, currency becomes bullets. Nobody cares how many followers you had or what kind of car you drove, even if it was a sick 1984 Honda Accord. You're cold, you're hungry, standing in a burned down Walgreens trying to wonder if rubbing alcohol counts as dinner. Trucks have stopped running, no more planes. No one's shipping you your Colombian beans from Whole Foods or viral chocolates from Dubai. There's no global supply chain anymore. So that means coffee, that's now a once in a year miracle if someone's cousin knows how to roast beans without burning down the entire commune. And that's just coffee. Multiply that by all the things we take for granted: medicine, fuel, sanitation, and not because the resources disappeared, but because the systems to access them did. There's no labor force, no logistics, no system connecting point A to point B. And without that, everything grinds to a halt. You end up with scarcity. Real scarcity. I'm talking we found half a bottle and we gotta vote how we distribute the ibuprofen amongst the group. And that's the thing, right? Capitalism hates scarcity, real scarcity. It needs plenty. It thrives when there's an endless system of product, energy, of people, willingness to work because they're too exhausted to think about anything else. Take that away and that collapses faster than an iPad kid without Wi-Fi. Let's be real, capitalism only works when it fattens up the working class enough to keep them docile, comfortable, bored, too busy to ask why everything still feels hollow.
Coming to bed, honey?
Yes, dear.
In the apocalypse, those people are the first to go. If you can't fix a generator, grow food, or fight off a corpse with a shovel, your Yelp reviews just don't matter anymore. Which makes zombie apocalypses categorically different. They turn survival into a full-time job. The only way to live is to band together, form communities, grow food, protect each other, pool knowledge and labor, not because it's idealistic, but because it's that or become lunch. And this shift exposes something we don't like to admit. Greed and resource hoarding aren't a flaw of capitalism, they're features. Profit comes from abundance, not scarcity, which is why billionaires don't share bunkers. But when the world ends, that kind of greed becomes a liability. It shows how fragile the systems really are. Capitalism only feels stable when you're propped up by comfort, distraction, and the illusion of infinite growth. One crisis, one global disruption, and the whole thing buckles. Now you're probably thinking, can we really say that zombies turn you communist if there are massive dictators within those communist systems? In The Last of Us, the WLF with Isaac, what starts off as a revolutionary militia turns into a xenophobic dictatorship at war with a blood cult. Things have become so devolved in Seattle that if you're not part of some grotesque mega zombie, then you're stuck between a murder cult or the prison staff at Guantanamo Bay. Even the cannibals that we saw in The Last of Us Season 1 run their operation like their own twisted co-op. They're organized, they're efficient, they just so happen to eat people too. In The Walking Dead, you've got dictators like Negan who take over their communities while keeping them safe, but at the terrible cost of being run by an egotistical, authoritarian, brutal, murderous madman.
Christ! No wonder you covered that up.
I mean, he provides for his community, but his pitch outside of that is, I'll protect you, but give me half your shit or I'll turn your head into Kevin's chili. So why do we always go from, we share everything, to give me your food or I'll shoot your dog? Why does communism still fail in the long game? Well, that's where things get really complicated, but before we talk about that, I wanted to take a chance to chat with some of my friends. So, Hassan, what do you think? Hassan, you there? Are you just gonna stare at the camera and look at me like that? With those pretty face and pretty, Asmongold, what do you think? Asmongold, are you there? Sorry guys, I think the spiders from his sink have somehow eaten him alive. Well, we'll check in on him later and see how he's doing. Now, I want to talk about why these communities still fail, but first, thank you so much, Hassan and Asmin Gold for being with us here. So now this takes us all the way back to the question I proposed in the beginning. Do zombies make you communist? And I want to explain why the answer isn't a definitive yes. In fact, there are examples that we see of capitalism returning in the late stage, right? When we see Shaun of the Dead, not only are they using them as a labor force, but they use them in game shows like this, right? That's someone's body, right? That's like a desecration of someone's corpse in like the most humiliating way. The Walking Dead has this too with the Walking Dead show, where essentially Glenn's kid creates his own circus, which is the traveling Walking Dead show, where he commercializes the threat of the early days of the outbreak. And all of these happen very, very late into the zombie apocalypse in both of these shows, once they really feel like they've had the zombie apocalypse under control. So long after the dead arise, someone somewhere figures out some way to capitalize on it. But it's still short-lived, right? The zombies are still the ones that end up winning in all of these circumstances at the end of the day. The zombie threat never really goes away in all of these. We keep trying to rebuild a world without greed, but we keep failing. And because the real virus isn't capitalism, it's power. Or hell, maybe it's us. Romero once said, "I've always liked the monster within" idea. Remember the book Animal Farm? You guys remember reading this one in high school, right? The pigs are put in charge and they start a revolution where they overthrow the farmers and free all the farm animals. But then in the end, all that power rises to the top. The pigs become greedy with that power themselves and essentially recreate that cycle of abuse amongst the animals. Anyways, it's a brilliant statement on not only why communism doesn't work, but really also why capitalism doesn't work as well. At the end of the day, it shows that within any power structure, greed is going to make its way to the top, which is what really makes zombie films so unique. Zombies showcase this innate human flaw by creating a villain that shows what true unity could look like. You see, zombies don't have power struggles, right? They don't compete, they don't argue, they don't try to lead. They're just unified, whether it's through fungus telepathy, kind of like we see in The Last of Us, or simply through their shared hunger, right? They operate as a single force. No ego, no hierarchy, no drama, just relentless collective motion. And that's what makes them terrifying. Not because they're evil, because they're efficient, equal, pure, in the most horrifying way possible. They don't scheme, they don't fight for dominance, they don't split into factions or argue over who's more deserving. They move with one purpose: no leaders, no greed, no betrayal, just collective instinct. They don't choose tribes, they are one. In that way, that makes them the ultimate communist, right? The power is distributed equally amongst all of the people. They own the means of their production, which in this case is reproducing. So while the death of capitalism may be the first thing towards a more equal society, zombie fiction reminds us that even then, our need for power will be our undoing. As we said, zombies are more communist than human communists ever could be. They are comrades willing to die for their horde by any means necessary. They have a completely flat hierarchy structure and the kind of unified threat that would make the elite piss themselves. So zombies don't necessarily make you communists, but they are better communists than human communists ever could be. And they show us that a communist mentality can defeat capitalism in the long run. They're a bold statement on how unnatural capitalism is and the threat that a unified collectivist approach presents. But that's all I've got for you guys today. Thank you so much for watching. This channel is still very new, so please make sure you're subscribed, smash that bell for alerts. The support is super appreciated, and I've got so many more fun videos on the way. You can also check out my work on Screen Crush and Film Theory, and don't forget to catch me live on Twitch, Twitter, and TikTok. That's all I got for you guys today. Until next time, peace.